are the Lord of all I am. Oh, won't you breathe in me again?
It is now my great privilege to introduce our speaker for today, our pastor, Reverend Steve Adkins. He is an ordained minister, a medium, a healer, a teacher, a lecturer at Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp. He serves as our pastor of the People's Church of Divine Prophecy, which meets here every Sunday. He has been a spiritual worker for the past 25 years and has worked on 3 continents, demonstrating evidential spiritual existence and performing physical healings, and my personal favorite teacher. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Steve Adkins. We'll cut that right.
Yeah, because that's a big set of shoes to fill you just described there.
She's the toughest teacher.
Thank you all for choosing to spend your holiday weekend, the last day of it here. It's been quite a time for me. I've been going back over some family things and trying to sort out what to talk about. And what I want to talk about today is gratitude. And I'll start that by telling a story that some of you have heard me tell before, some of you haven't. And it's about it gives a perspective on how we perceive things that happen to us and how they can actually be something totally different than what they were perceived to be. So I'll start this with the story about a young Indian by the name of Joseph. And this person was decided, first he was in college. This is about the start of America's involvement in World War II. And he's in a college with some exchange students from Germany. And he got to be friends with a couple of them. And then the war broke out and all the exchange students got sent home, and he joined the Merchant Marine, and he moved around to all the different ports of entry prior to the United States' direct involvement in the war, World War II. And he had this propensity for drawing. He could draw everything he ever saw in detail. And he'd just throw his drawings away when he was done because it was just something to pass his time with. So at some point, somebody decided that there was military value to these drawings because he would draw the arm patches of the soldiers, the German soldiers, and the different soldiers and the different tanks, and he drew all the troop names and the emblems, and they would have somebody was collecting them and sending them back to the War Department for intelligence. Well, as any military secret is, it's eventually discovered, and he was taken as a prisoner in a neutral port of call by the enemy at that time. And they did some terrible things to him to try to get him to tell him who he was working for. I mean, they starved him, they beat him, they nailed his feet to the floor. There's the most horrible things that could ever be done to him to make him tell something he didn't know. And finally, he was sent off on a troop train to be killed to a Jewish internment camp rather than a prisoner of war camp, because he wasn't considered a prisoner of war at that time because the United States was not officially in the war. So as he's just beyond any kind of realization of what's going on, he's just numbly walking in this line to a troop train. And all of a sudden he feels himself being shoved very harshly by a soldier. Shoved and shoved and shoved until he ended up in the prison of war line rather than the concentration camp line. And when he looked up, he realized it was one of his friends that was an exchange student from college that had been put into uniform. And he managed to get him to live out the war in a prison of war camp. And when he was sent home to his tribal lands, his elders decided that he had lost his spirit through that type of experience, and that he was considered to be insane by the tribal leaders, and he was not allowed to exist among the people until he recovered his spirit and could live in peace and harmony with the tribal people of the land. So he had a choice. He could either leave the community or he could be put through this ritual that would cause him to find his spirit and reconnect to his spirit again. So, and this ritual took place where he was dunked repeatedly in ice cold water with his hands bound and his feet bound until he began to hallucinate. And as he began to hallucinate, he saw all of the people that had wronged him through this experience coming before him, and he had to forgive them or he would die through this ritual. Or in order to regain his spirit, he had to forgive these people also. So one by one he forgave them for what had been done to him, except for one man. He could not forgive this one soldier that as he was laying in between the sessions of questioning and torture, this soldier would come in there and cram his mouth full of chicken guts and the most horrible stuff just to and he thought it was just so inhuman that this soldier would do that to him on top of everything else that was being done to him. And he just could not get by what was going on. And finally, on the verge of death, he had a spiritual vision of this soldier that came to him in his time of almost dying. And the soldier said to him, he said, "They told me to let you die, and that's all I could find to feed you with." So this soldier was going to the kitchen and getting whatever he could get without being noticed, and was managing to feed this guy the little bit that he could get. So finally, Joseph forgave this soldier, and he was reintegrated, found his spirit, and began to reintegrate into the community. So this is just a little bit of a perspective that we may want to consider in our lives, because, you know, God has a purpose for us, and God interacts with us in our lives. Many times the things that happen to us we don't agree with, and they're difficult to understand and hard to put into perspective. And the only way you can put these things into perspective a lot of the time is through a sense of gratitude. And some of the things that I came across in my old writings about gratitude is that a lot of times people confuse gratitude with other things. The basic definition of gratitude is being thankful for something that someone else has given you. If you think about that's a very different slant than what we have been taught to think about gratitude. It's being thankful for something someone else or even God has given you that was not yours to begin with. And when you think about this, the opposite of that is selfishness. It's us wanting more, not even looking at the things that we have. And a lot of times this is accompanied by a complaining. Why is this happening to me? Why is this going on? Why can't I get what this person has? Why can't I be as successful as this person is around me? You know, you're always looking outside instead of seeing what to be grateful for. And the smallest things are things that we should be grateful for, things that we take for gratitude. And I know we've all heard it, the breath in our body, the beating of our heart, and these types of things. But the very freedom that we have to move around and practice our faith, the very freedom we have in this country, is something that is taken for granted a lot of the time, and not gratitude. And I'd like to read you a letter, something that a soldier sent me that I'm familiar with, and because of personal reasons for him as well as me, I'm not going to say who it was. But this is a recent letter to me about a soldier that came back from Afghanistan. And I had asked him what the sum total of his experience was, because he was very religious, very spiritual, and I wanted to see what his perspective was. Now, this man was trained the Marines in special weapons tactics, and he was right out on the front line with things. So I'm going to read you a little thing that he sent me. As you can imagine, my time in Afghanistan made a significant impression on me that I'm really trying not to let become the defining moment of my life. It was truly the most awful, most rewarding, most terrifying, most frustrating, and most humbling experience that there is simply no way to convey to anyone who has not been there. I found myself to be a hollow shell of who I was before I went there. Like everything inside was scrambled, but the outer shell was perfectly intact. I've lost two of my greatest assets there, and that was my short-term memory and ability to feel spiritual joy. Both are coming back at a very slow pace, and I have finally begun going to counseling paired with acupuncture, which has been going incredibly well. I feel remarkable guilt for what I put my family through and for the obvious negative effects on my wife and children. We all know it is part of the deal being a military family that in and of itself provides no solace. I have abandoned my inner spirituality, and while I truly feel the loss and I want it back, I feel no guilt about my actions taken to cause me not to be in touch with my Maker and the wonderful Spirit of God. That too is very slowly recovering, and I have luckily been able to resist turning to alcohol or prescription drugs, as either of these would simply bury me. I thought I knew something about the basic inhumanity of war, but I didn't have a clue, and I'm still struggling to reconcile the inhumanity I witnessed and was part of. All in all, I'm getting better very slowly, but feel so far short of the man I used to be. What this person's doing is they're trying to find gratitude for their life. They're trying to recover and feel value with what they had at one time. And I think that's also shown by the story of Joseph, where he had to recover his spirit. And we all go through these times of difficulty where we lose our spirit, we lose our way. And the only way that I have been able to find my way back, and I've been in places similar to this. I've never been to war, but I've been to some pretty difficult places that many people haven't been. And the only way that you get back is to begin to find gratitude for that which is around you, the simplest things, the family, the friends, the opportunities presented to you on a daily basis, regardless of how little or how much you can do. And the simplest kind of thing was like today when I was carrying that sign downstairs for the church. I've got a bum knee and it was aching me, and I started to think bad about my knee, and I said, you know, what you should really think about is the happiness that you have a church here. You have the opportunity to carry this sign downstairs. Because if you weren't carrying this sign downstairs, it would mean you didn't have a church here. And you didn't have a lot of people coming here that were receiving spiritual help and hope. So this is just a simple way to turn these things around. When we think that we have the most difficult time facing us, I would ask you to begin to do that. Gratitude is directly proportional to your faith and your conscious connection to God. So whenever we feel ourselves beginning to slip, I know some mornings I wake up and I can just feel my mind starting to turn to that unappreciation of what I know I'm going to have to face that day. And there was a time in my life where I didn't have to face anything, where I was put in a place where all of my needs were taken care of, where all of my choices were made for me for years. And then I think about that time and realize that I had the opportunity to meet life's challenges with the freedom to decide how to deal with it. These are the simplest gratitudes. And I know some of the time, a lot of times we think, oh, why don't I hit the lottery? Oh, that would be the greatest thing in the world if I could just hit the lottery. I've thought it, and I know a lot of other people have thought it. But what would happen if you hit the lottery? Basically, in a nutshell, I would remove myself from life. I would quit involving myself. I would quit challenging myself. I would just go live a life of luxury and not be involved. A lot of people say, oh, I'd open charitable centers and I'd do this and I'd do that. Well, the truth of the matter is there isn't but 2 people that have ever hit the lottery that put money into charitable efforts. One was right in Sanford, Florida. 53-year-old woman won the largest lottery that was ever given to a single person, $53 million. She set up a charitable trust with that for people. One other person did it. Out of all the hundreds of thousands of lottery winners, that's what happened. 99.9% of them removed themselves from life because they weren't required to be responsible. They had no challenges. And that's pretty much what I would do, probably. I mean, I would like to sit here and convince myself that I'd buy myself a church somewhere and I'd do all of these grandiose things, but human nature is human nature. And that's the reason I'm not being given the lottery, because I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing now. And I'm supposed to be facing the challenges that I'm facing now. Money would only temporarily solve, and I'd enjoy having some of my problems temporarily solved, without a doubt. The human side of me would do that. But God, in His infinite wisdom, puts things in my path that I cannot do without to progress spiritually. And once you discover what your spiritual path is, there's no getting off of it. You can wish that it wasn't before you. You can wish that there weren't the challenges before you, but they're there. And if you step aside from it, they'll be there when you come back. So the gratitude is really in greeting these opportunities and realizing that you have the freedom to meet these opportunities. Because like I said, for almost 5 years I had none of these opportunities. I was not allowed to make decisions for my life. And it was a very difficult time for me. And while it wasn't war, I saw the true inhumanity of one man to another in that place. And it was a difficult time, and I felt much like that soldier that wrote that letter. Before I went in, I was practicing Kundalini Yoga for 5 years, breathing, meditating every morning. And then I found myself in that place, and I lost all of that. And I lost all of my respect for other people. And when I first came out and was given the opportunity to deal with life again, everybody sounded like they were being smart to me. I asked my mom what time it was, and it sounded like she was being smart to me. And that's just the attitude and the mindset that I had to deal with, let alone something of this nature. I did see people get killed where I was at, and I saw it done for no reason at all. This kind of pressure really put something on it. And would you believe that that was about 35 years ago? And today I still get upset with dealing with life. Sometimes I wake up and wish my life wasn't for me to deal with, even after that experience. So what that tells me is that spiritual values and a conscious connection to God is something you have to renew daily. It's something that you have to take time to appreciate, to believe in, to feel that presence of God with you all the way down to your very cellular structure. God is not some entity outside of you that is called up from a distant place when you need Him. God is the very vibration of life within your body. God is the very vibration of living things around you that causes things to exist. And when you feel that living vibration of God all the way down to your very cellular structure, it's much closer, much more intimate, much harder to lose connection with that. So I would ask you in your morning meditations, your morning quiet times, to just try to feel that. Just sit there and feel that presence that's always there. Andrew Jackson Davis was asked one time, which is a pioneer of spiritualism, he was asked where spirit existed in this world. And he said, in between the smallest particles of creation is where God exists and causes inspirational movement on this life plane. And what's kind of funny is they haven't discovered the atom yet. And what do they call the space between the particles of an atom now? A field. Do they know what it is? No. They just know that it's theoretically there. So just think about that when you're trying to connect with God. Too many times in my early stages, when I was trying to reconnect to the mind of God, I thought it had to be this disincarnate being that I had to call back and had to come down to me in a booming voice or a flash of light and let me know that God was there. But God's much more subtle than that. God is much more subtle than that in the challenges of your life and the rewards of your life and the inspiration that you have. It should become natural to you to move in God's path, not a decision-making process. It should be a matter of conscience tempered by the presence of God. It should be something that natural to you. And this is what we should strive to be, not memory by rote of what God wants us to do. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That only works so long until you feel that intimate presence that moves you, second nature. There's going to be struggles, and I still have those struggles, but I do have that moment where I can draw back and feel that presence of God. So I would like to close now with just giving you those words for thought, and just ask you to think about that sense of gratitude, about the breath in your body, the freedoms that we enjoy, because these are things that are given to us by someone else for us to enjoy and make the most of. Thank you.